So sorry, probably whoever joined my earlier hangout on this topic, you might not have seen the screen sharing because I messed up. Instead of sharing the entire desktop, I was just sharing um, only the hangout screen. That's why you were not able to see the content. Now the issue should be fixed. Let me confirm that. Only yeah, now it is better. Okay. Sorry for the distraction, whoever is on the WebEx. It was my bad. So now you can see that data is copied completely. Okay, so import all tables have ran successfully. You can run list tables to understand how the number of tables we have. Probably for Hangouts folks, whatever content I have missed, I will record a video probably over the weekend. It's almost 50-minute video. I will record and I will prefix that video to this video. I can edit the videos and all those things, so I will try to do that. Sorry for the whatever inconvenience caused for you guys. Okay, so when we do list tables, we have these tables. There are 8 tables. Now we should see 8 directories in our warehouse directory that we can validate by running Hadoop fs-ls. We can see the 8 tables here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can also get into the one of the directories. Let's take departments. You can see there are 4 files because number of members are 4. And then you can do Hadoop fs-cat. And then run part -m star. And then we can see the data. And here the data, how many records are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You can run eval command. To see we have 11 records in the source table also. So these validations are very important. Okay, then only you know whether it is working or not. Sometimes there can be many false positive messages. So until you are comfortable and understand in detail what is happening under the hoods, you should not just take it for granted. You have to validate and make sure that things are as expected between the source and also the destination, or source and sink. Okay, so that is about import all tables. A very means lot of people emphasizes a lot on that, but as per my understanding or as per my experience, it has very limited usage, and I didn't use any time in my life. But as part of the certification or as part of some of the interviews, they might emphasize on the import all tables. So it will be good if you understand it. But when it comes to usage, it has few limitations, and I don't use import all tables that much. Okay, there are other examples also as part of the documentation. I will highly recommend you to go through these things and practice. So there's a little bit of compression related stuff, how to specify the data files and all those things. I will explain these parameters. But to practice, if you want to know how these are used, you can use these commands which are part of my blog. Okay, that is import all tables, and these are the limitations which I have already explained. Now we will go to the next topic: import data into HDFS. So this is the most important command in Scoop. Okay, and we will understand the concepts behind the import command, syntax and semantics. using scoop to import to get data into HDFS. Let me confirm with these guys that they can watch. Okay. So what I'm talking, let me go here, and then these things will lose the momentum, and things can get little bit ineffective. But I'm very comfortable with scoop, so I can come back to the flow very quickly. I'm already in a good momentum, so we are good to go. But these kinds of issues can distract significantly. Okay, so first let us run the command, and then I will explain how it works. And before even running the command, let's go to the syntax, and let us understand several control arguments, and we will use few of them by defining a little bit complex problem statement, and then we will see how we can build the scoop command for the problem statement. Okay, now if you go to the syntax, if you click on any command, and if you, in this case, scoop import, and if you go to the syntax, there are the arguments are divided into multiple categories. One is common arguments. So the common arguments are common across all commands. Whether you go to the list databases, list tables, eval, import all tables, you see these parameters. So you need to understand as many other parameters as possible. Connect, we have already seen several times, so you understand what is connect is. Password file, you understand password, you understand username, you understand -p. So verbose is to just print more information while working. So whatever logging information you are getting, if you want to get more details, you have to use verbose. Okay, and then Hadoop mapped home. So if you, it is very important to understand this one. If you go to etc scoop conf and then run ls-ltr, you have scoop site.xml and scoop env.sh. If you open scoop site.xml, sorry, this file only has scoop specific properties. It does not have default fs, which tells where is our name node is. Okay, so you can see that there is no fs.default fs where you see in the courseset.xml. Then, but scoop needs Hadoop to copy the data, to read the data for import and export. So how scoop understand where Hadoop is? It all depends upon the Hadoop home environment variable. So scoop needs to understand where Hadoop is. Somewhere, I think in scoop env.sh, I guess, we specify a few details about Hadoop home. See, here you can see. So Hadoop home is set to user HDP current and HBase client. I don't know why they set to HBase client for Hadoop home. Probably let's validate this one. I'm going into this location. Okay, so if you look into this, they're appending to Hadoop home. Okay, somewhere early, so this is colon, so they're actually appending to whatever path it is already existing, as per my understanding. So because it is appending, it will try to check Hadoop home in multiple locations, and Hadoop home will be pointing to wherever our configuration files are at runtime. So it has to have, so by looking at Hadoop home, it can know where our configuration files are, like coreside.xml, Hadoop, hdfsi.xml, etc. And Scoop will be aware of where our environment is. For some reason, if you don't want to set Hadoop home, if you have multiple Hadoop homes for whatever reason, if you don't want to set at Scoop level, sometimes we want to pass it at the while running the commands. In that case, you can actually set the sorry, here it takes Hadoop mapped home. You have to point to only one Hadoop home, but if you have several Hadoop mapped homes, and if you want to override at runtime, you have to pass this one, Hadoop mapped home, and the directory where this Hadoop mapped is. So it will try to go to that location and get the necessary details to run the MapReduce jobs, and it will run the MapReduce jobs. Okay, I think let me see if they have given any explanation on this. Probably I might be wrong. They didn't give any explanation. Probably in the latest version, Hadoop will be using yarn. If you want to use MapReduce, I think in that case we can use this one and give the MapReduce configuration files directories, so that it can use MapReduce to run MapReduce framework to run the Scoop-based MapReduce jobs. Otherwise, it will be using yarn. Probably that could be the purpose of this parameter. Anyway, this is not that important. We don't use we don't use frequently. And then connection manager and driver, these are the class names. So sometimes we have to give these driver class names. So for performance tuning purposes, when we get the jar files, there might be different classes for different purposes, which drives. So there will be a driver class. So for example, if we go to user HDP current not current. If we run jar tvf on this one, we will see all the classes here. So you have a one driver class org gjet mm mysql driver dot class, and you might find few more. You see there are several. Primarily, there are two driver classes. One is this one, and the other one is this one. Like that, in some of the jar files, you will have multiple drivers. Okay. So if you want to use one driver class over the other driver class, which is not default, then you have to specify hyphen driver, and then you have to give the fully qualified path of the class name. So if you have to give this one, we have to say like this: hyphen driver org dot gjet dot mm dot mysql dot driver. Similarly is the case with connection manager. Okay, so these two are the parameters which at times we might have to override for whatever reason. Typically we don't need to, but if we have to do that, we have to understand what these purposes are. These two take the class name, and we can pass the class name. Again, they are not very important and we don't use on regular basis, but you should be familiar in case there is a bug, and if documentation says use a particular driver, class, you need to be aware that there is a parameter called hyphen hyphen driver, and we can use that one. Okay, so these are common arguments which are common across all the commands. So here we are talking about import. So let me go to the import now again. Syntax. So apart from common arguments, for each of the purpose, there will be different sets of arguments. So these are validation arguments, which will validate the data copied, and it is supported with single table copy only. And you can actually define the class also, validator class, which you want to use. And then import control arguments is the most important set of arguments in import command. Okay. So hyphen hyphen append. So if you don't use append, what will happen is if the table already exists, if I run scoop import command, if the table already exists, it says table not table, directory already exists where the data is, or whatever is specified in the target directory, it will fail saying that directory already exists. So if you use append, it will keep on appending to the existing directory, otherwise it will fail. And then by default, data will be copied as text file. If you don't specify anything, it will be hyphen hyphen as hyphen text file internally. If you want to copy data in some other format, the supported formats are Avro, sequence, and Parquet. Okay, you can use any of these formats. You just have to say as Avro data file, as sequence file, as Parquet file, and you can copy the data in that file format. And I will come back to boundary query later. It is a little bit complicated. First, we have to run simple import command. Then we will come back to this boundary query. And then columns. So if you want to just copy data from few of the columns, if you have 10 columns, and if you are interested in copying only subset of the columns, you can use columns and you can pass the columns which you want to copy. Delete target directory if you want to delete the target directory if it already exists, and reload the data. So if you use append, it will copy data to the existing directory. If you don't use append, if the directory already exists, it will fail. So if you have to overwrite, what you have to do is you just have to add this one, delete target directory, and it will delete the directory and it will import the data, which means it simulates the overwrite. So direct is direct connector. So if you are familiar with database technologies, or even any technology, so there are if you have to do some processing of the data, first you have to get the data into the memory and process the data, and again write the data back to process the data in the memory. And after processing whatever is the output, you have to write back to the file system or whatever it is. So reading and writing is called as I/O. Okay, and if you don't use parameters like direct, again it has to be supported by the underlying database. So in this case, we are using MySQL. If you don't use direct, for each and every import command, it gets data into the memory, the typical table, and then again pass it on to Scoop to load into HDFS. So it takes a lot more resources. So when you use features like direct, it will bypass the memory as much as possible. It will use very limited memory for buffering, and when it reduce the usage of the memory and use only the I/O buffers and pass on the data without doing any processing, performance can be significantly improved when you try to load enormous amounts of data. So direct can be used if the data if there is a direct connector for the underlying database. As of now, as per my understanding, it is only supported for MySQL and Postgres. For other databases, even if you use hyphen direct, it will not have any impact. So even if it is not supported, it will not fail. It will still proceed, but it will do it in a regular basis. So you need to understand the underlying database internals about how this direct works. In short, if I have to explain, it will reduce the usage of memory and CPU if you use the direct. It will only use IO buffers. It will not use memory for other purpose. Fetch size, if you want to limit the number of records that needs to be fetched in one shot, you can specify fetch size. And then the inline lob limit, which is with respect to lobs. So you are all experienced folks. You might have encountered lobs. Lob means large object. Typically, if you create a table with lob, and if the entry into that for a particular record into a lob column is very big, then instead of having the data in line with the other record, it will create a file separately, and there will be a pointer to that file as part of the record. Okay, so in that case, if you want to read the lob, you have to set the maximum size for an inline lob. Otherwise, it will not work. You can only read up to some certain extent. Anyway, it is also not very important, and we hardly use this. If you have to work with lobs, you have to understand it in detail. Otherwise, it is not required. So num mappers is very important parameter. It controls the parallelism of your import. -m or -num mappers can be used to set the number of mappers. By default, it is 4. So query. So to understand the query, typically we use table to read the table from underlying database and load into target. But if you want to instead of using table, if you want to get the output of a query and then load into the target database, then you can use -- query. Okay, so split by. Sometimes we might want to split the data by a different column than primary key. By default, when we use number of mappers, it will split the data based on primary key. I will explain as part of the next class about how the split logic work. So when we set number of mappers to 4, it will use the primary key column to divide the data into 4 mutually exclusive buckets. You need to understand the term mutually exclusive. So if there are 100 records, if we give number of mappers are 4, on average each one will get 250 mutually exclusive records. Okay, you don't find overlapping between the 4 parallel threads. All the 4 parallel threads will process approximately 1/4 or 1/n of the number of mappers, whatever number of mappers is defined, and it will try to fetch those records mutually exclusive to other chunks, and it will try to copy the data. That is about how the number of mappers typically work. And it uses primary key to determine how to divide the data. Primary key is nothing but not null and unique. So if you have 1000 records, you will have 1000 unique records, and it will use the information properly, and it can split the data without any duplicates. So when you don't want to use primary key but some other column, then you can use split by. Okay, so we will see that. We will see split by quite a bit as part of tomorrow. Auto reset to one mapper we have already seen with import all tables. If the underlying table does not have primary key, either we have to use split by or we have to auto reset to one mapper. Otherwise, it will fail saying that I cannot determine how to divide the data into mutually exclusive buckets. It's the most important parameter. It is the one which will tell which table to be copied. Target directory, HDFS destination directory. So it will directly create the files in that location. I have already explained. Warehouse directory, it is a parent for the table destination. And if you want to filter, for example, if you just want to copy data based on certain condition, you can use where here. I will explain the usages little bit later. So whatever you have specified in the where condition will be used while doing the import. And I will run a simple import command, and then we will try to improvise based on the problem statement. If you want to compress the data, you can use hyphen z or hyphen hyphen compress. If you want to use a particular algorithm to compress, you can pass the algorithm using hyphen hyphen compression codec. And null string and null non-string. So if you want to represent, so if you think about it, in any RDBMS, null is represented in its proprietary way. In Oracle, it is completely Oracle internal way about how null is represented. We don't need to worry much about it. But here, our files are typically readable. Okay, when it is readable, you have to you have to store null string or null number in a particular format. So if it is a varchar or char on source, and if you are trying to and if it has null values, and if you are trying to load the data into HDFS, you have to tell how you want to represent null in HDFS. So these are the command. This is for string based fields, and this is for non-string based fields, specifically numeric. So these are the control arguments. You have to master these things. Okay, especially if you want to give the certification, you need to have the knowledge of these things so that you understand the problem statement, and based on the problem statement you can use it. So first, let us start with a simple import command, and then we will define the problem statement tomorrow, and we will try to execute that problem statement. Okay, so the simple import command will look like this. Here we are trying to load the data as text file, and this is the target directory for our department table. So already I have that I have the directory. So first I'm deleting that. And then I'm copy pasting this one. So here we have only table and as text file, and then target directory. Connect to username, password are same, and we have used all for almost all the queries so far. The new parameters we are trying to use are table, as text file, and target directory. Now let us run the command. Okay, actually I have to use training 8634. Okay, now I have to say, okay, even the connect string I have to change. Okay, let me copy one at a time. Database name, username, Twitter underscore DBA, password, IT Varsity. I want to copy table, departments, target directory, / user training 8634, scope import, departments. And then I want to save it as text file. If you want to save it as a arrow, you can say as arrow. If it is sequence, you can say sequence file. If it is Parquet, you can say as Parquet. So when you run this command, you have to understand the output here. So what it is doing, it is executing a SQL statement in the database. So how does that statement look like? It is just select t.start. T is nothing but alias to the table name. from the table departments and alias and limit 1, so that it can get one of the records, and then it goes through that record and determine the data type of each of the field, and then it will create something called POJO, plain old Java object, which will be used as part of our MapReduce job. First, we will create a Java class, and then that Java class will be used to compile the overall logic into a jar file. So here you can see this is the Java class which is created based on the output of this command. It will just have the getter and setter methods, and also the variables and data types for each of the column in the table. We can actually watch it also to understand how it will look like. So this is how it will look like. So here you can see it has created department ID column of type integer. So to build this Java class, this Java class is built when we run the query. And to build this, we need to understand the data. So here, by running this query, it understands the data, and based on that data, it will create the Java file. And using that Java file, it will build the jar file using other APIs of scope. And then it will use this jar to actually read the data from source database using JDBC and write into HDFS. And this will be submitted as a MapReduce job on our cluster. To get the details about the job, you can go to somewhere it will give the, yeah, you can go to this URL to track the MapReduce job which is used to run the job. Okay, and then while running the query, before even submitting the MapReduce job, while copying the data, before even submitting the MapReduce job, it ran a query called query which look like this one. So why it is using department ID? Because department ID is the primary key in the table. Okay, so it is computing minimum and maximum, and then we have number of mappers as 4, right? Which is default. You can see that number of splits as 4. So in this case, if we log into MySQL, I'm logging into MySQL now. Retail underscore DB, select star from departments. So what it have? It have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 124, 126, 8000. So there is this is minimum of the department ID, and this is maximum of the department ID. Using this minimum and maximum value, it will compute the 4 mutually exclusive chunks of the data, so that it can use 4 parallel threads to copy the data. So the difference is 7,999 between the two. Okay, so what it will do is approximately 8,000, right? So what it will do is it will divide the difference, which is 8,000, by the number of threads, which is 4. So the first thread will be 1, 2, okay, 8,000 minus 1 divided by 4, which is approximately 2,000. So the first thread will be 1 to 2,000. And then second thread will be 1 to 2 into whatever the difference is, which is 8,000 in our case, divided by 4. So not 1, but 8,000 divided by 4 to 2 into 8,000 divided by 4. And the third thread will be 2 into 8,000 divided by 4 to 3 into 8,000 divided by 4. And then fourth will be 3, this one, lower bound, and then the upper bound. This will be the lower bound for the fourth thread, and the upper bound will be 8,000, the final value. Here, this is not completely accurate, but I'm giving a fair idea. So the way it will work is, it will add 1 to this, so that you don't get the, it won't fail at the border condition. Okay, so here you will get 1 to 2000. Here you will get 2001 to 4000. Here you will get 4001 to 6000, and here you will get 6000 to 6001 to 8000. So in our case, 1 to 126 will go to the first thread, because there is no data from 2001 to 4000. Second thread will not get any data. Third thread also will not get any data, and fourth thread will only get 8000. Okay, so this is how the split by logic will work. And if you actually and this will be the driver. First you will get minimum and max, and maximum of based on the primary key, and the minimum will be subtracted from the maximum, get the difference, and use the difference to calculate the mutually exclusive buckets to copy the data. And then it will launch 4 threads, and each thread will have that where condition which satisfies those boundary conditions for its thread, and it will read the data and it will write into HDFS. That's why when you do Hadoop FS-ls on that location, you see one part file have 110 KB, 110 bytes, and other one have 13 bytes, and 2 of them have 00. And if you read this, it will have all the records from 1 to 126. And the other one will have 8000. So this is how it will work, and it will split the data based on the minimum and the maximum of the primary key. So you can either get the data using table for simple purposes, or you can also use query. But query you should not use if you don't have any transformations. Query should be used if you want to join two tables and read the output of that query to HDFS, then you can actually use query. But let's try one thing here before we close for today. I'm giving query here. Select star from departments. And hit enter. It will fail, because when we give the query, even though departments have the primary key, it does not, Scoop does not have logic to go through what is the table and whether the table have the primary key or not. It does not have, because query can be anything. You can write a complex join query, you can aggregate, you can have an aggregate query, you can have anything. For that reason, it does not do those validations. So when you are using query, you have to be specific only in those cases where you have to read the output and write into the target HDFS location. You can use the query, and split by have to be specified if you want to use query and still use multiple threads to process the data. In this case, I'm trying to use split by department ID, and now it will fail saying that directory already exists. Okay, and when it comes to writing the query, you have to give you have to do this, where dollar conditions. This is mandatory. This is as part of the syntax. If you go to the syntax, if you read the documentation, you will understand. Again, that is only to satisfy their logic, the way they are building. So when we when we specify where dollar condition, they will replace this dollar condition with this 1 equal to 0. I don't know why they are doing that. I know, but I don't want to get into details right now. You don't need to worry why the rationale behind that. Okay. Anyway, it fails because the directory already exists. So here, either we can use append to append to the existing one, or you can say delete target directory. Okay, now it will delete the target directory and it will reload into the location. So I will not be going through examples for each and every control argument tomorrow. We will define a problem statement and we will try to fetch the data based on problem statement, and we will determine, I will try to explain how to determine which parameters should be used for our problem statement. Okay, now you can see that when I say query with split by, it worked. Okay, so this is how you can use import command. We will see a few more examples tomorrow, and then we will talk about export also. Probably tomorrow we might not be able to wrap up the scope. It will take another class next week, and then we will see what needs to be done. We will see the other topics. Okay, so any questions here? I can take few questions. Again, I'm extremely sorry for the people who are on the Hangout. You guys could not see my screen for a very long time. And I'm sorry for that. So let's wait for a few seconds. If you have any questions, I can take those. One question from Pramod. Pramod is a long-time follower for me in the Google Hangout, is whether I'm planning to cover Kafka in the course. Probably not, but I'm planning to conduct a workshop on Kafka. One of my friend is working on the material. Even if we could not cover as part of the course, we will take care of covering the Kafka. But Flume will be covered, and I will give details where Kafka will be used. But Flume will be covered as part of the course. As we are running a little bit behind, and I want to focus on Spark data frames or Kafka as part of the course, we will plan for a 2-hour session on Kafka a little bit later. We are already working on the material. So any questions from the WebEx folks? Okay, then it seems there are no questions. Thank you very much for joining the session. We will catch up tomorrow, and have a nice one. And Scoop, you have to practice quite a bit. If you don't practice, it will be very tough to understand these things. And most of these things are not foolproof. So you have to do trial and error for each and every database, and master the skills and understand the gaps, and start building applications using Scoop commands with scripting or programming language of your choice, provided Scoop is supported in them. That being said, thank you very much. Bye.